If you're looking for more sweet, gentle, comforting reads, these 10 books reminded me of softness and slowness and just felt like a big warm hug. Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Gabby and I talk about all things books. You may have seen my previous video, which was 10 books that made me romanticize life again, and that video was touching on all books that were wonder and whimsy and beauty, and this one is more of a soft, gentle video on comfort reads and on books that really felt beautiful and just really soft and slow, and ones that are absolute comfort reads to me. These books aren't always big and dramatic, there's not a lot going on them, they're very quiet and gentle, and they are just so comforting and I love them and I can't wait to share them all with you. So I've got them all here. I will be sharing a little bit about each book, what it means to me, and I'll be sharing some beautiful quotes and some visuals. You all loved the scrapbooking mood board vibe of my other videos, so I'll be including a lot of that and just showing you the vibe and capturing the whole essence of the book and talking about what they mean to me and how they feel very comforting. So get cozy, grab yourself a cup of tea and settle down, and here are the 10 books that feel like a big warm hug. First on the list we have an all-time childhood classic. This is Wind in the Willows. This edition that I have here is so sweet, and I actually collect editions of Wind in the Willows and Winnie the Pooh. I feel like Wind in the Willows and Winnie the Pooh are kind of on the exact same wavelength, and I'm not going to talk about both here, but when I'm talking about this one, I'm also talking about Winnie the Pooh and how much it means to me and how gorgeous and comforting it is. I just love this story so much, and I have from a very young age. This quiet classic follows the lives of Mole, Rat, Toad, and Badger along the riverbank, and just their lives and how they live a slow life and just the small things in life. I just absolutely love how simple and beautiful and charming this story is. It's not fast paced or high stakes, it's simply character driven, and it's just a wholesome story, a wholesome collection of stories, how they make friendships and bonds, and it's just such a sweet book. It's comforting and moves slowly, and it really celebrates home and focuses on rest and simply the presence of just being in the moment. And I feel like it's such a book about slow living and finding comforts in life. It's a childhood classic that really shaped my wonder and awe for nature and the world, and it's always one that's been really close to my heart. And the illustrations of this really bring me comfort too. Same illustrator as Winnie the Pooh, and they are just gorgeous. I really think the art of rereading a book, especially a childhood classic, is really important and really a big thing in comfort reading for me. I just found a book at the op shop just last week actually, which is called On Rereading by Patricia Meyer Spacks. And this book really touches on the art of rereading and how important rereading can be and reading childhood classics. And she embarked on a year-long project of rereading dozens of novels, childhood favourites, fiction first encountered in young adulthood and never before revisited, books frequently reread, and works of literature that she didn't like at first but she wanted to try and read again. And she talks about her experience rereading, and I'm really excited to read this one. I feel like I definitely love rereading. I think rereading is a big part of comfort books, and yeah, I'm really excited to read this. So that's a little side note. And the quote I have for Wind in the Willows is, "There is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats." Next up is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I went and saw Dolly Alderton talk about her writing and everything last year, at the end of last year, and she is an amazing, captivating talker. I love hearing all her takes on all her life experiences and just hearing her reflections on everything. She is so incredible. So this is a memoir, and in this memoir, Dolly Alderton reflects on her 20s with raw honesty, from disastrous dates, heartbreak, hangovers, therapy, and deep friendships. It's funny, emotional, and wise, and it just feels like a phone call to a very close dear friend, and really reminisces and reflects on life in her 20s, and it really speaks to girlhood and girls that are going through their 20s and living in their 20s. So I am definitely the target audience for this one. It's chaotic, honest, and full of love, and I love the way that she talked about female friendships and how comforting this was to me. It was a reminder that love doesn't have to be romantic to be life-changing, and that friends can be your soulmates too, and I really resonated with that whilst I was reading this book. There's a really famous quote here that says, "Nearly everything I know about love I've learned from my long-term friendships with women," and I just love that quote so much. And then I've got a quote at the end of the book that I'm going to share with you. This really resonated with me whilst I was living by myself and I was single and I was finding myself in my early 20s, and I was really appreciating the friendships that I had, so I'll share this with you. The morning sun leaked into my bedroom and poured onto my mattress in a bright white puddle. I stretched out diagonally in my bed across the cool sheet. I was completely alone, but I had never felt safer. It wasn't the bricks around me that I'd somehow managed to rent or the roof over my head that I was most grateful for. It was the home I now carried on the back like a snail, the sense that I was finally in responsible and loving hands. Love was there in my empty bed. It was piled up in the records Lauren brought me when we were teenagers. It was in the smudged recipe cards from my mum in between the pages of cookbooks in my kitchen cabin. Love was in the bottle of gin tied with a ribbon that India had packed me off with, in the smeary photo strips with curled corners that would end up stuck to my fridge. It was in the note that lay on the pillow next to me, the one I would fold up and keep in the shoebox of all the other notes she had written before. I woke up safe in my one-woman boat. I was gliding into a new horizon, floating in a sea of love. There it was. Who knew? It had been there all along. This one just transports me back to the time when I read it and makes me feel really emotional, and I just really resonated with me in that time, and it's just really gorgeous in the way she writes about love and friendship and everything is just absolutely wonderful. This book is just gorgeous. Next book is Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is the only one of his books that I have read, and I am dying to read Never Let Me Go because I love this book so much. I find a lot of comfort in stories about robots for some reason. Some of my favorite movies of all time are Big Hero 6 and The Wild Robot. And I just love stories about robots learning human love and compassion, and they seem really sweet and for some reason always make me really emotional and cry, and this is exactly what this book was. Klara is an artificial friend waiting to be chosen by a child and welcomed into a new family. As she becomes part of the family's life, she witnesses love and illness and sacrifice through her curious, learning lens. She is very innocent and unaware of what a lot of these human emotions mean. She learns what it means to be human and have emotions, and she grows a lot through this story, and it's really gorgeous seeing it through her eyes and her lens. And it becomes a really emotional and gorgeous and tender story, and I just love it so much. It's about connection in an increasingly disconnected world, and it explores Clara's innocence and hopefulness and seeing the world through her new eyes. It reminded me of the beauty in being gentle and noticing small things, and in caring deeply even when you don't fully understand things. And it made a very big impression on me, and I still think about this book a lot to this day. I especially loved Clara's connection to the sun. She believed that the sun would solve and heal many things, and she was just so connected to it, and I thought that was just such a sweet thing for a robot to think. There's a quote here that says, "The sun noticed me and came down. I'm sure now he came especially for me." And some other quotes I have here are, "Until recently, I didn't think that humans could choose loneliness, that there were sometimes forces more powerful than the wish to avoid loneliness." And another quote I have here, "I was glad to see her happy. Even if she forgot me, I didn't forget her." I don't know why robot stories make me so emotional and cry, but they just do, and this one is just such a special story, and I love it so much, and I want to find more books like this. The next book I have is In Their Branches, Stories from ABCRN's Trees Project, edited by Gretchen Miller. So this is not a very common book, and I feel like a lot of you won't know about this book. This is from the Australian ABC's radio, and they've collected a lot of excerpts and different people's writing about their connection to trees and nature, and it's actually a really, really gorgeous book. And I've heard that the audiobook is stunning because it is a radio series. A lot of these stories are read by the people who wrote them, and there's a lot of sounds of nature and stuff, so I'm definitely going to go back and re-listen to that because I've only read the book, but this book is gorgeous. I love the cover so much, and there's so many beautiful illustrations, and each few pages there's a different story from each person in this collection, and I love this book so much. Each person reflects on their personal relationship with trees and birds and the Australian landscape. It feels really grounding, and it's really nice to listen to other people's memories and connection to nature. Whilst I read this book, it felt like I was forest bathing myself. It felt like I was transported into the forest, and with the trees, it was just so beautiful. It's gentle, reflective, it touches on memory, belonging, and healing through trees and nature. And I read this book myself whilst I was going through quite a rough mental time. Quite a few years ago, I was out camping with my family and I put my phone down and I just read this book sitting under the trees and out in the forest. And it's made such an impact on my life and it's so beautiful. And I want to read out a few of the short excerpts for you because they are so stunning. And also I still have a bookmark in here, which is a painting that my mum did whilst we were out camping, and she painted this of a tree, which is just so special to me. So this one's called A Good Tree by John McCrae. I grew up in a peppercorn tree on a farm called Summerley, in a world made from all the junk that wasn't looking. Hessian bags, old boards, pallets, boxes, and sheets of tin. Anything I could haul up and lash on. It was a good tree, and it taught me well how to climb, how to fall, and how to get back up again. In that tree, I was chief, engineer, and king. I built lookouts, ladders, hideouts, and escape routes, swung trapdoors, and hung Tarzan ropes. Over time, it became more tree castle than tree house, safe from big brothers and homework. It was my fortress, Peppercorn. It was my youth. That tree and I are old now, both weaker than before. Gravity never gets old and never weakens. It has pulled down everything that I hold up, and most of the mighty tree that once held a castle in the air. Soon there will be no debris, no tree, and no me. That one is gorgeous. Next up is Small Bodies of Water by Nina Mingya Powles. This is a lyrical collection of essays exploring water, memory, cultural identity, and the author's relationship with her body and bodies of water. It moves between swimming pools, coastlines, ponds, pretty much any body of water, even rain and the idea of water, and it reflects on heritage, migration, and womanhood. Nina reflects on growing up between cultures and swimming and water, and her writing about nature and memory made me feel so held and comforted, and I just loved her writing so much. It's so gorgeous. Her prose is so lyrical and gorgeous, and it invites us to reflect on our relationship with the world and ourselves. I love this quote here that's at the front of the blurb. It says, "Where is the place your body is anchored? Which body of water is yours? Is it that I've anchored myself in too many places at once, or nowhere at all? The answer lies somewhere between." And I also love this quote here. It's, "The feeling of water is the feeling of holding and being held." This book is just gorgeous, and I love her writing so, so much, and it's so special to me. Next book I want to talk about is Real Estate by Deborah Levy. I love Deborah Levy, and I do not talk about her enough on my channel, but she is one of my all-time favorite authors, and this is the final third book in her living autobiography series. Real Estate is a reflection on home ownership and creative womanhood. This is Deborah Levy navigating her life in her 50s, and she is dreaming of a symbolic house filled with lemon trees, freedom, space, and basically just daydreaming about her future and the home that she wants to create for herself as a creative and as a woman. It reminds me of all the times that I've daydreamed and romanticized about my dream future and home, and her writing is so comforting and beautiful, and it's just so sweet, honestly, so sweet, this writing. I just love her reflections on her life and her excitement for the future. Even though she's in her 50s, she's still excited for what is to come. It's intellectual and wondering and pulses with desire for freedom and creative space, and for a home that reflects your truest self. And I really felt like I saw my future self through her writing, and I love how she touches on the art of writing as well. It's just so gorgeous. I have a few quotes here. "I wanted a grand old library, a fireplace, and a pomegranate tree. I wanted a place to write, to love, and to live without apology. The house of my own was not a material space. It was an idea, a dreamscape, a language. I began to want what I already had. That seemed a radical contentment." And then one quote I have here lastly is on writing. "A woman writing thinks very carefully about the rooms she cannot enter, and she writes them anyway." Next up is probably my favorite book of all time, but that's a very big call, but I think probably is my favorite book of all time. This book is so, so special to me. This is Body Friend by Catherine Brabham, and if you've been on my channel for a while and been following me, you would know all about this book, but I'm going to be talking about this one again because I love this book so much, and I love Catherine Brabham's work and her writing. This is a deeply internal, meditative novel about illness, identity, and what it means to live inside a chronically ill body. It really touches on the push and pull between rest and recovery, and that's represented by two different characters in the book that represent the protagonist's kind of ideas of her fight between should she be resting or should she be recovering and being active to try and recover from her pain and her illness. I love how it describes how women move through the world whilst carrying invisible pain and chronic pain, and I've never felt so seen and comforted by a book. It really touches on what it's like to live in a body that aches and doesn't work the way that the world expects it to. There's a lot of rawness and reality and a lot of real truths to this book, and I felt so incredibly seen. And also, this book is set in the inner suburbs of Melbourne, really close to where I used to live by myself. And when I read this book, I related to it on so many levels, and it started my exploration of my connection to water and recovery of my own chronic illness, and how water plays a big role in that connection and swimming and recovery. And yeah, it's just such a gorgeous book, and I love every single line in this book. And I just went to the launch of Catherine Brabham's new novel Cure, which also touches on illness and mother and daughter relationships, and I am loving that book so far. I'm in the middle of reading that, but this one will always have a special place in my heart. And I have a few quotes that I want to read out here because I have underlined so many quotes from this book, so I'm going to read out a few for you. This is about the first time that she went into the water and how she felt connected to it and how she felt free from her body. I told her how my joints felt light after the pool. So light I didn't care about my thoughts. I could have stayed in the water forever. I felt some new connection to the routines and associations of the pool. I hadn't yet found words for it. Probably I was gushing, in the way I sometimes let things go with strangers. She laughed. You're hooked. I laughed too. I was light. So light, the swimming made me feel all body, only body. My new and best painkiller, a dose of cool limpidness across the skin like water. And then this quote on illness. When illness is invisible, the pain manifests in behavior. Behavior speaks you. Unwitnessed wound, behavior is the way you say it all. The brain learns pain. I have read this, which makes chronic cases particularly hard to fix. The problem is no longer just isolated body parts, inflamed joints of a haywire immune system. The person is the pain, with the whole of their brain and central nervous system. It is learned behavior, entwined with personality in this way. The person becomes quick to anger, quick to fear, quick to judge, cannot receive criticism, cannot cope with change, cannot control disproportionate emotional responses. The person, and here I may be talking about myself, about Sylvia, about Frida, develops a worldview structured by pain. Pain dictates perception, dictates capacity. When pain is chronic, subsumed into daily experience, it becomes another thing you do. Breathe and feel hungry, hurt and wake up and go to sleep, ache and go to work and make small talk, laugh and have conversations with others, be drunk or be sober, hurt and love and ache. It is being, and so it must have language, a trait of character. It is different, is what I mean. The chronic state is different, a distant cousin to fleeting pain. This book is so, so special to me, and I have a little signed book here dedicated to me, so I love this book so much. Next up, I have a book that is not traditionally comforting. I wouldn't usually have this on the list, but it feels very comforting to me in a personal way. This is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. And if you've read this book, you know it's not much of a comfort read, but for me, it was the first time I ever read about endometriosis and saw it represented in a book. I remember the exact moment that Frances mentioned her period pain and her possible endometriosis diagnosis, and it was so real and raw, and I just felt so seen and supported during this book. I was going through a lot of pain and a lot of isolation myself when I was reading this book, so to see that in fiction, and it's just become way more common now to talk about illness and stuff in fiction, but this is my first time ever reading about that, and I felt so seen, and it's just become such a special book to me. It really doesn't shy away from the raw reality of illness. It talks about the way illness and diagnosis can consume your identity, and this goes alongside the storyline of Frances trying to find herself through college. It's an emotionally raw exploration of love, power, and desire, and the characters are extremely flawed. They make a lot of mistakes, and we don't necessarily love them the whole way through the book, but this is very iconically Sally Rooney writing. I love her writing so much. I feel like it's really real. It feels like characters that you would know in real life and experiences that a lot of people do experience. This was also the first ever book that I read of Sally Rooney's, and this book made me fall in love with Sally Rooney's writing, and it's just a very special book to me and really pushed me into loving this kind of genre of writing, and I love this book so much. Next up, we have Everyone and Everything by Nadine J. Cohen. This is very similar to Body Friend, and I actually went to an author talk of Catherine Brabin, who is the author of Boyfriend, and Nadine J. Cohen, and they were on the same panel talking about books and writing and connection to water. So this one is also very special to me. This book explores connection to water and illness, but through the lens of mental illness. This book is set in Sydney instead of Melbourne, but it's still very comforting, and I grew up in New South Wales near Sydney myself, so it's a very special place and location for me. The main protagonist's life is basically falling apart. Her marriage is over, her brother is in crisis, and her body and mind is just spiraling, and she just feels like she's hit rock bottom. This captures the chaos and complexity of trying to find stability in the midst of breakdown. There's tenderness and warmth, but it doesn't shy away from mental illness and grief. It was very raw and real, and I really cherished and appreciated the writing. It was very special and very close to the author's heart herself. Hearing her talk about this book, it was just so special. This book shows how we can rebuild moment by moment, and it reminded me that healing is not always beautiful, it's not always linear, and it added such an important level of humanness to the idea of healing and grief and trauma. And the two quotes that I have here are, "My mind was a place I was afraid to visit, so I left the lights on and hoped it would settle down without me. And the world didn't fall apart, even though I did, and somehow that meant I could start again." Okay, on to our last book. We have Autumn by Ali Smith, and Ali Smith is one of my favorite writers of all time, and Autumn is actually the first book I ever read of hers, and it is the first book of this seasonal quartet. It really touches on autumn and changing seasons, and I love this book so much. This book is set in Britain and follows the unlikely friendship between a young girl and her elderly neighbour, and it's a really sweet story about connection and comfort. It also touches on politics, art, and memory, and it's very poetical and lyrical, and I love her use of magical realism and her really beautiful lyrical writing. She is just an absolute genius when it comes to writing, and she mixes and swirls nature into it, and it's just so gorgeous. I just think she's such a genius. It's a dreamy, magical book, and it reminded me how time blurs, how stories build us, and how relationships, especially unexpected ones, can save and heal us. It explores beauty, art, and human connection, and faces the complexities in our world. And what I love the most about this book is how it reflected on the season of autumn and what that means. It's about change, letting go, cycles ending, and knowing that winter will come, but spring will also come as well. It's really melancholy, but also very hopeful, and it just feels very comforting, and I really loved this one. And the quotes I have here are, "It was the worst of times, it was the worst of times again. That's the thing about things. They fall apart, always have, always will. It's in their nature. Hope is a thing with edges. So is love, so is death, so is autumn." Anyway, these are the books that felt like a big warm hug to me. They are comforting and beautiful reads, and I'm so glad I got to share them all with you guys. I hope you're able to find a new favourite book in this list, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I have loved chatting to you about all of these books, and they all have such a special place in my heart, and I hope you love them as much as I did. Let me know what books are special to you and feel like a warm hug to you in the comments below, and thank you all for watching, and I will see you in a video very, very soon.